Auri, and I'm a bartender, and I love bourbon. By day, I'm also a software engineer. So I know a lot about code, and I'm learning a lot more every day about bourbon. So I had a few questions about bourbon and spirits in general, and I'm like, gosh, where do I find out more information? So I turned to the U.S. Federal Code for spirits to learn, to get some of these answers that I'm looking for. And this is specifically Title 27, Chapter 1, Subchapter A, Part 5. And after reading that, I came up with 7 very cool takeaways, just bourbon facts, spirit facts based on the U.S. Code. And let's go over those. I hope you learned something. It was pretty educating for me. So after reading the code, everything started coming into focus. After practically reading all of it, and it's a lot. It's dozens of pages. I just remember looking through the browser. It was a lot. So number one, what's the difference between bourbon and bourbon whiskey? I've been told by multiple friends, I've read other places, that there's a difference. So I'm like, well, the people who write the rules should tell us, what are the rules? So what's the answer there? So after searching that U.S. legal code, I could not find a difference. So short answer, from what I've read, there is none. Bourbon and bourbon whiskey are the same thing. And you can use the terms interchangeably as long as you follow the rules of bourbon, which I explained in my distillery tour video, which you can go watch. And if maybe I'll do another video with even more details there. Yes, there are absolute nuances, but bourbon and bourbon whiskey are the same thing. So to answer your immediate question, bourbon and bourbon whiskey are the same thing, so you don't have to wait till the end of the YouTube video to get your answer. So now that that's answered, let's go over a few more details about this. So number two, what does the age statement on the bottle mean? If there is even an age statement. So first, there are some rules around the age that's printed on the bourbon bottles. There's bourbon versus straight bourbon. So you can call, as long as it follows the rules of bourbon, you can call it bourbon. But you can only call it straight bourbon if it's at least 2 years old. And if the youngest juice inside of, and sorry for the slang, the youngest bourbon inside the bottle is under 4 years. So if anything's under 4 years, you must have an age statement. So high level, if it's under 4 years old, it must have an age statement. But if it's at least 2 years old, you can optionally call it straight bourbon. Now, there's a few rules around these years. You've probably seen like blended bourbons, where it's not a single barrel. I'll get into that. This is super common and it's super okay. I guess with Scotch and so forth, some people don't like the term blended, but blended is okay. Distillers blend bourbon from many barrels to get their signature taste profiles. That's the opposite of a single barrel approach, where the juice is coming from. The blends usually have this like small batch designation, and small batch doesn't really mean anything. There's no legal term around small batch. It's just something that sounds cool. But it certainly indicates, when you see small batch, that the bottle you have purchased is not sourced from a single barrel. Now often those barrels will have multiple ages. Some might be young, like 2 years or 4 years. Some might be older, all the way up to like 18 or 20 something years. Bardstown has an interesting line, like their Fusion series, where they list the different bourbons. It might be the Discovery series, I'd have to check. Anyway, edit that later, right? But getting back to the rules, if the age is listed on the bottle, it must reflect the age of the youngest bourbon in that bottle, or the youngest whiskey. So even if you have a 17-year-old bourbon in a bottle, if there's any 2-year in there, you have to list it as 2 years. Now you can get away with this, like soften the blow a little bit by saying aged a minimum of 2 years, which makes it sound better. Or you can just, as long as everything in there is at least 4 years, you can just not have an age statement. You'll also hear that as NAS, no age statement, non-age statement. So what about single barrels? Well, you know, single barrel, the rules are pretty straight up about what the years shown are going to be, what the age statement is going to be. And that is because the single barrel is a single barrel. So it was either all aged for 2 years, all aged for 4 years, all aged for 18 years. So following those rules, if it's under 4 years, you have to have an age statement. If it's over 2 years, you can optionally say it's straight bourbon. And then since it's a single barrel, you know, if it was 7 years old, you could say aged 7 years, and that would, you know, apply to all the juice in that barrel. Now, you may be wondering what's the difference between Kentucky straight bourbon and straight bourbon. I've been trying to find any definition of that in the code. I could not find something specific about that. I've heard that, hey, if it's straight bourbon, it's at least 2 years, which I already explained, and that is in the code. And I have heard that Kentucky straight bourbon must be at least 4 years. But I couldn't find any rule around that. That's just what I've heard. So if you know where I can find that information, hey, put a comment in there. So let's move on. So number 3, does American whiskey only have to be made with cereal grains like corn, rye, malted barley? And the answer there is no. You can use any cereal grain or what's called it's a pseudo-cereal grain. And that would be like amaranth, buckwheat, and even quinoa. I don't know if I'd really want to drink a quinoa whiskey. But hey, you know, I can't knock it till I try it. So, yep, as long as it's a cereal grain or a pseudo-cereal grain per the code, that's allowed. Number 4, what is a distilled spirit? We talk about bourbon a lot on this channel, but we don't really talk about all the other spirits. So what is a distilled spirit versus like wine? So a distilled spirit must be bottled at least, no more than 48 degrees of proof. So you can't be more than 96% alcohol and be called a distilled spirit that at least is drinkable. I'm going to have to check on what Everclear is, because I thought it was 98, or I thought it was 98% alcohol, but I'll double check on that one. And a distilled spirit does not include any sort of mixture of wine. So if there's wine, it will not be considered a distilled spirit. And then per the code, ethyl alcohol, hydrated oxide of ethyl, spirits of wine, whiskey, rum, brandy, gin, and other distilled spirits, including all dilutions and mixtures thereof, for non-industrial use. So note that spirits of wine, which is or anything that's less than 50% of wine on a proof gallon basis. Number 5, what is the official definition of proof? And we hear about proof all the time. So from the code, it's the ethyl alcohol content of a liquid at 60 degrees Fahrenheit, stated as twice the percentage of ethyl alcohol by volume. And then a proof gallon is the same, just at, you know, a gallon. So I think this would be a much more fun experiment to run on YouTube. Just go try proving this out. So I'm going to go take a look at that. I know we've talked about the gunpowder approach, but I think I'm going to do a video on how to prove proof. So stay tuned for that. I think that's going to be a lot of fun. Number 6, bottled and bond. I see it a lot under, for bourbon. Like you see a lot of bonded bourbon. But can other spirits be bottled in bond? And the whole point of the Bottled in Bond Act was to prevent people from getting gypped by a lie about the alcohol content or what's in a spirit. So it stands to reason that other spirits should be covered under bottled in bond. And the answer to that is yes, absolutely. Other spirits can be marked as bottled in bond. It has to follow the same rules. But even gin, vodka, they can be bottled in bond. But there's some rules. So let's get into that a little bit. So a bottled in bond spirit, which can also be called bonded or aged in bond, it must be stored for at least 4 years in wooden containers that contain the spirits and have been in contact with the wood surface. With vodka, however, it must be stored for at least 4 years, still, in wooden containers, still. But those wooden containers must be coated or lined with paraffin or another substance which will preclude contact of the spirits with the wood surface. Which I guess would make sense. That would keep it clear, maybe. And then in gin's case, it must be stored unlined wooden containers for at least 4 years. So, for vodka, it's the wooden containers coated or lined with paraffin. And with gin, they have to be coated or unlined with paraffin. Now, is bottled in bond only an American thing? Nope. I mean, it is an American thing, but in the U.S., you can put on the label bottled in bond on a foreign bottle as long as it follows the same bonding rules, which I covered in my previous video, and you can read all the details I'll put links to this code in the description of this video. So 1, it has to follow the 6 rules of being bonded. And 2, that country must also have the equivalent of bottled in bond, like rules and regulations that determine what a bonded spirit would be. So as long as those line up, even a Scotch could be sent over here to the United States and marked bottled in bond. So number 6, what is a distilling season? So speaking of bottled in bond, it talks about it must be from a single distiller in a single distilling season. But I was wondering to myself, well, what's a distilling season? What's that? Is that like an entire year? I'm not a farmer. I don't know. I'm not a master distiller. I don't know. So I went to the code. A distilling season is the period from January 1st through June 30th, which is the spring distilling season. And then there is a fall distilling season, which is July 1st through December 31st. So there you have it. That's what a distilling season is. And finally, number 7, does bourbon only have to be from the 50 United States? And the answer is no. No, bourbon does not have to be from only the United States. It can be from U.S. territories as well. So, per the code, Title 27, Chapter 1, Subchapter A, Part 5. It can be from the District of Columbia, not a state. Or the Commonwealth of Puerto Rico. So as long as it's a U.S. territory, from what I was reading, it can be considered bourbon. So where can you learn more? We've gone through these 7 cool bourbon facts. Where can you learn more? Well, I'm going to put the links to everything that I researched in the description for this video. Maybe you find some interesting factoids. Please feel free to comment, anything that you learned. If there's something else that you'd like to call out, I'd love to hear what you find. It's a lot to read, but wow, there's so much interesting information in there. I hope you'll check it out. That's all I have for this episode. I hope you've learned something new today. I have other videos on this channel. I hope you enjoy them. So please like and subscribe, as with all YouTube channels. And tell me if there's anything else you'd like me to cover. I've got a lot of videos coming up. I'm looking forward to sharing them with you. And until next time, be well, be safe. Ciao.